You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast, dedicated to the 40-plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation. Hey, welcome back to 40 Fit Radio, and welcome back to the 40 Fit Nation. I'm one of your hosts, Coach D, and I've got Coach Trent in the house.
I'm the other host.
And he's the other host.
The only other host.
He is the significant other to the host. Well, on the radio.
Wait.
On the podcast radio.
Is this like a parasite
No,
host
no,
are you talking about?
No. It's a friendship.
Oh, okay.
It's a whole kinship. It's an Irish kinship
it's
thing.
What we call symbiotic.
Yes, it's... Sounds like, yes, we have a synergy here. We have a synergy.
That's my favorite.
Yes.
Like business lingo gets ridiculous, and it's
we're going to develop a synergy with your organization. Meaning we're going to take you over.
My favorite is leveraging synergies.
Yes.
We need to leverage synergies on a go forward basis.
Yes, meaning we're going to dissolve your group. You guys are no longer going to exist.
It's a strategic
leveraging of the synergies.
Don't ask me what those are, but there's synergies that we need to leverage.
Yes.
And then that way we can sink that putt.
That has nothing to do with our podcast. Absolutely nothing.
No.
Well, hey guys, today we're going to talk about what I would call fresh eyes. And basically it is getting a fresh perspective on your programming, which would be your fitness programming, whether you're a lifter or you're an endurance guy or lady, or you're doing some other sport that relates to fitness, and also the coaching side of your fitness program. So, I mean, you could apply this to anything. This concept of fresh eyes is basically built off the fact that over time, when you have a coach or you have a personal trainer or someone that's overseeing and kind of supervising and guiding you through your fitness program, sometimes I call it, you get this kind of like resistance or desensitization to the person that you're coaching.
Yeah.
Especially on the barbell coaching side, which is really where we're going at today, is that whole barbell coaching side.
Right.
And it is, you watch these lifters and these clients lift over and over and over and over again. And maybe you've got one or two common problems that you're seeing with a particular lifter, and you've given them cues over time. And has the problem improved and changed? Yes, it has. But it creeps back, or it's really never been fully resolved, or because of a lack of adherence to a particular cue, you start to develop another problem. Or because of a form fault that maybe you're not seeing as a coach, you find another problem develops, and then you got to go back to the model or back to the what we would call the norm of the model and reset the client to what they need to be doing. So this concept of fresh eyes, though, could be applied to everything. Trent said earlier, you develop a resistance or kind of a desensitization. Your cues just stop working over time.
Yeah, they change. It's because, what a cue really is a mental model. It's a description of your mental model.
Sure.
It's a little reminder for you to do something that the coach has instructed you to do, right? And in order for a cue to work, you have to have a mental model first. That's why when anybody that's brand new comes into our gym, we first start with a teaching method. We teach you how to do the squat, and that's a process. We don't just say, hey, let's go squat and start fixing things.
Right.
We teach you first. So that way we have a reference point when we give you a cue for what we want you to do. But in that teaching process, you form a model in your head of what it's supposed to feel like, what it's supposed to look like. Like you kind of, everybody's head is a little different, right?
What are the points of performance?
Most of us in our head have some sort of concept of what our body is looking like from a third party perspective, even though we can't see ourselves while we're doing it. And the thing is that mental model is dynamic. It changes over time.
Sure.
Why? I'm not entirely sure. But as a result, your cues will change over time, sometimes drastically. And it's funny, we joke sometimes as coaches, we might have 6 people in the gym, and we got to, over here in this corner, we're going to yell at them, hey man, chest up, come on, get your chest up. And then over there in the other corner, we're like, chest down. So
confusing.
So cues can be contradictory because what we're doing is we're working with that person's mental model of what they're doing to get them to move correctly. Both lifters are moving according to the model, but they need different cues. And the same thing can happen to you as an individual where for 6 months, chest down might be the thing that you need to know or remember to execute a lift correctly. And then 6 months later, maybe you need to hear chest up.
Right.
And so this is where having fresh eyes from time to time come in and evaluate your lifting, your technique, your running, whatever whatever we're talking about here, whatever activity you're doing, is really helpful.
Sure.
So that you can get that, you can kind of figure out, hey, is my mental model lining up with what I'm supposed to be doing? Right.
And I think the most difficult thing about a coach asking for fresh eyes on one of their clients is that it can be a little sticky. No, what's the word I'm looking for? It can be a little touchy at times, a little touchy at times, because you don't want your lifter or your client to think that you've not done a good job with them.
Right.
But really, sometimes you've hit a wall, or you've got a challenge with a lifter, or you've got a challenge with an athlete. It could be in nutrition that you're talking about. And maybe it's cueing in nutrition, or maybe it's leadership or guidance in nutrition, and trying to figure out a way to get a client to do a certain thing that will improve their overall nutrition, but you're just not getting the result that you're looking for. You're not being as effective and as efficient as you would like to be with your client.
Right. Yeah.
And that happens with lifting too. Most oftenly, we're talking about lifting again. That is the problem.
Yeah.
And like you said, the adherence to a model. I spoke to a lifter the other night here in the gym, and I was just saying, when we're coaching, when Trent and I are coaching in the gym, or any barbell lifting coach is coaching, they should have a model in their mind that they are overlaying on top of the client that allows them to look at certain points of performance. It allows you to say, is the bar over the midfoot? Is the chest down? Is the stance correct? Are the toes slightly turned out? There's this whole model that we use. And the beautiful thing about the model is that in itself is very simplistic, but that's where the genius is too.
Right.
Coaching is not the hard part. Adherence to the model by the lifter, I think sometimes is the hardest thing to do. And then the coach just has to look at that lifter and see, are they adhering to that particular model and all of its points of performance with their eyes? And then if they're not, how do we fix it?
Right.
Why are they not? There's the why as to why they're not adhering to it. And then number 2, how do we fix it?
Right.
And like you said, the cues, when I think of a cue, I think of a single word or a very, very short phrase that represents a concept. And it's a concept already that the client knows, but the single word or the very short phrase, maybe it's a 2-word phrase, like chest up or like knees out, something like that.
Right.
But that bark to them, or that, command to them, means something much bigger. It has a whole meaning behind it. And so that's really what coaching does.
Right,
Good coaching does, is it provides the model first, and then it uses cues to reinforce that.
Right. Yeah, and I think you said earlier that coaching is not the hard part. Did you mean cueing? Because I think I'd argue that cueing is not the hard part, but the coaching is the hard part, but it involves a whole lot more than cueing.
Yeah.
Coaching is not just barking cues to people.
Correct.
There's, like you said, it's a multi-faceted process.
I would say that the hardest thing is not knowing the model.
Yeah.
Once you learn the model, that's a very good foundation. The hardest thing is watching the client or the lifter perform the model, finding where they're not adhering to the model, figuring out why, and then providing the appropriate cue to alter that.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that's what's hard.
That distillation process, that analysis and distillation into how am I going to take this, and then that step of picking the right approach to fix the problem. That's hard. Yeah, and I'm getting better at that all the time.
Well, because you could give them a cue and it do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Or do the opposite thing that you think it should do.
I think everybody goes through when you first start coaching. Once you understand the model, you start to see errors easily. Yeah. Great. But often, especially when we're working with novices, rank novices that have not had much experience in the bar, they're making a bunch of mistakes at once.
Sure.
And so being able to prioritize and say, okay, what's the most important thing to fix here? Because, if you go ahead and start fixing everything at once, that's completely overwhelming. Right?
Yeah. Well, and I think every coach has to develop in their mind a step-by-step process as to how they're evaluating the movement.
Right.
I like to start from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And then I work my way through the points of performance in whatever lift we're performing. One of the things I find in the seminar staff with starting strength is that when we have lifters come in, those who are going to be testing out as coaches in the seminar, and those lifters who are just there to enjoy the ride and learn more about themselves and about the lifts and how to apply them. What we find is those who are testing out, well, even in both groups, but we're more aware of those who are testing out because we're asking them questions. We're testing them on the platform, let's say.
Right.
So that we can find out if they can, number one, recognize errors, and number two, fix them. Mm-hmm. It's very hard. It comes at you very fast.
Yes.
It's like the first time you learn to drive and your parents tell you, we're going on the highway.
Right.
And everything's moving at about 3-4 times the speed that you've been doing. And it takes a very quick, reflex time. And you've got to make decisions a lot faster. And cars are coming by and it's almost sensory overload. And so I think for a newer coach or younger coach, that's exactly what happens.
Right.
The beautiful thing behind Fresh Eyes is, even with more experienced coaches, is that other coach may have not necessarily seen that lifter lift yet. And so they may have a totally different perception on their lifting performance. It's really good. It's really good to do it.
Absolutely. And I find I learn novel approaches to fixing the same problems all the time.
Sure.
I watch other coaches coach their lifters, and I'm like, oh, man, I would have never thought to tell somebody that. I've never come up with that phrase. That's brilliant. I'm going to steal that.
Well, you gave one of the ladies a cue one time. You filled in for a class for me, and you gave one of the ladies a cue, and it pretty much solved a problem that one of them was having. And it was something very simple. I just didn't catch it. I didn't catch it. I think it was either Beth or Brenda, or can't remember who it was, but I just didn't catch the change in the way I should coach them and cue them to do something that I hadn't been able to get them to do yet. I think it was wrist position maybe in Beth in the press. I can't remember. And I had just missed it, And so, and then I coached someone for you the other day. I coached a lifter and he's been having crazy bad biceps tendonitis or elbow tendonitis.
Yeah.
And when I started looking at his squat and I was looking at his bar position, I was like, that bar looks like it's about an inch low. And he's already kind of long in the trunk.
Yeah.
And so what I noticed was he has a tendency to not want to lean over because he's already pretty long in the trunk.
Yeah.
So to keep that bar on the shelf of the back, he likes to keep the elbows elevated up a little higher because he feels like it's coming off the back. And he's got some meat on the back too.
Right.
He's got a pretty good shoulder meat shelf, Yeah. And so, but I told him, I said, let's raise that bar about 1 inch up on your shoulder because it looked like it was on the edge of the ledge instead of sitting on the top of the ledge.
Right.
And we did that. And I said, okay, light hands and elbows down in the bottom. Light hands, elbows down. So elbows forward, basically.
Yeah.
I tell him elbows down, though. And that's what he did. He was like, wow, that tremendously reduces the pressure in my elbows. So it was Clint, by the way.
Okay.
Clint came in to get a workout in.
Awesome. Yeah.
So
perfect.
But that's a great example. And so the idea behind Fresh Eyes there is that I've never seen Clint squat other than in some videos.
Right.
You deal with him all the time.
Yeah.
So that's just something that you're assuming because of where it looks like it's on its back. Okay, that's in the right position.
Right.
It's so easy to miss because it's such a tiny little thing. And like wrist on Beth, it was so easy for me to miss that because it's an obvious thing that I should have already gotten.
Well, and I think it's something that, like we said, lifters are dynamic, right? It changes over time. And I think, if I had to venture a guess with Clint, it might have been
started right.
He was
migrated away from the model
3 weeks ago. It was looking good. And then he's, he's starting to get a little bit more antsy about hitting some
Right.
really heavy squats for him.
Right.
And so he's thinking, he's like, oh man, I got to really get this bar down. I got to really get it locked
Right.
in. And so it started to creep down as he's tried to feel that lock.
Well-
and all of a sudden now we've got a deviation from the model. I just don't see it because I'd seen it drift so slowly over time.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at it and I would say, oh, the bar is a little bit, I noticed that the bar was a little bit behind the midfoot.
Yeah.
And so then I'm trying to figure out why it's behind the midfoot. And the first place I go to always is bar rack position, position of the bar on the back. And I noticed, it looks like it's on the top of his deltoid, kind of rolling off the edge almost. It wasn't at the edge yet, but it was close.
Right.
I said, let me feel that. And so I went up there and I just kind of palpated that area and I was like, yeah, the bar's an inch low. It wasn't severe. An inch is nothing.
Sure.
On the back, and a guy that big, I mean, he's 6'2", so it's not that big of a difference, but it made a big difference in his squat.
Absolutely.
I think the other thing, and you said the exact word, which cues me to say this, creep. We get form creep over time that can be very hard for a coach to see if you're watching that lifter 3 times a week lift.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you step away from that lifter for a couple of sessions, or let's say you go take a vacation for 2 weeks and you come back and you watch that lifter lift, you talked about it earlier about this concept of what we look like when we lift and our perception of what we look like.
Right.
Then all of a sudden you go, whoa, I never noticed that before. Look at that right there. Boom.
Yeah, that
You know?
that has happened to me this last couple of weeks. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
we've been
took
talking about your knees.
with myself.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. And you've been gone too.
and watching my lifters after taking
Right.
a week off and come back,
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all
Yeah.
this stuff.
Yeah, I think all stuff I
little
gotta fix.
little things, but it's the reason why we focus on these little things is
Yeah.
because by the time they get to be pretty advanced, it makes a big difference
Yeah,
when you got
sure.
315 on your back.
Yeah, and
So-
then it starts to, like we're talking about, the deviation away from good programming or good nutrition or good lifting form. The deviation on the front end of the program, if it's small, really doesn't matter a whole lot.
Right,
Because the weights are light
Yeah.
and the nutrition is we're just trying to get some basic concepts in and the programming, it matters, but you can slightly deviate a little bit on your poundage increase or decrease or setting rep scheme a little bit. But overall, as the client gets more advanced, those small deviations make a big error or a big problem on the backside.
Right.
And so fixing those things along the way is very important. But I think what you're saying about being away from on vacation also gave you fresh eyes.
Yes,
Naturally
yeah.
gave you fresh eyes as a coach.
Right, right. Yeah, I think, there's something else that's interesting. When you coach somebody long term, you inevitably end up forming a bond with that person.
Sure.
Right. And I think it's important for a coach to, we're very friendly in this gym. We're very informal, and I want people to feel good about coming in the gym. This is their sanctuary. We say that a lot. This is your little barbell sanctuary. So if you've got a really busy work life, home life, you can come here for an hour and this is your time and you can feel good about it because you like all the people here. And we have good conversation and chit chat and all that stuff. But I do think it's important for a coach to have a little bit of professional distance,
Right.
because that's what makes us effective at being able to cue. When
Sure.
we're in that moment on the platform, I need to be able to give you an instruction and you follow it because you're looking for leadership in that moment.
Sure.
And I think sometimes when you coach somebody for a long period of time, you end up becoming friendly, and the power dynamic, if you will, starts to shift.
Sure,
Where you're
sure.
and it's probably some part of me is like, well, I don't want to come down too hard on this. I'll be like, hey, why don't you fix this for a little bit?
Right,
Whereas
sure.
a fresh coach that's in the same relationship, they don't have that.
Right.
So they're like, hey, elbows down.
Yeah.
Right now. Elbow, show me. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
As
Yeah.
opposed to, it's like, hey, as opposed to waiting maybe until the set's
Right.
over and say, hey, next time, why don't you fix your elbows, okay?
Yeah, just a little bit. Bring
just
your
a little
elbows down.
bit.
Just-
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I've noticed that start to happen. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because I think as coaches, long term with the lifter, we have to become more of consultants.
Right,
Than I don't. If I'm if we're 6 months in down the road and I'm cueing all the time on every set, I did a bad job.
Right.
Because I shouldn't have to do that. That's way too much. It should be occasional at that point.
Sure.
To really harp
Sure.
on the good stuff, on the important stuff. beyond that, I think the relationship should become more of a consulting relationship where it's more about like, hey, what do you want out of your training from here? Let's come up with a path, but I'm going to need more feedback from you as a lifter, and we're going to work together to make this happen.
Well,
so basically, I think that's the interesting thing is the power dynamics can shift, and when you bring in a fresh person, it's a fresh personality. It's someone that doesn't have the same bond, and so they're going to listen to you in a way that they wouldn't listen to me. And the same way, you're going to talk to them in a way that maybe I wouldn't talk to them.
And sometimes you have that 50-mile expert concept. I mean, you have you know, it's amazing how you can be coaching a particular client for years or months or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they go to some other gym somewhere else and someone gives them a cue and it's a gym that's got a similar philosophy of ours.
Yeah.
And they come back and they go, wow, I didn't realize, you know, I needed to do this. And you were
Right.
like, yeah, I've been telling you that all
Like,
along.
that's what we were working on.
But again, you're talking about that relationship.
Yeah.
The relationship is important between the client and the coach. And I think that should always be allowing you to, number one, provide a product and a service that is of high quality and gives your client the best that you can give them. And then secondly, you develop a friendship with them, a certain amount of what I call koinonia, which is basically just kind of a friendship or a kinship with them.
Yeah.
But that can breed contempt. That whole idea of familiarity breeds contempt. You know?
Yeah.
So, and I find that with older lifters too. Sometimes they come in and sometimes they're extremely teachable, and sometimes they think they know what they think they don't know.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to let them know, you know, this is my area of expertise.
Right.
I'm going to teach you this. You just do what I tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
In a roundabout way. And then eventually you'll want to do it because you get it.
Right.
You get that, you know, and so there's a certain amount of blind obedience on the front end that you've got to have from a client to get them, you know, it down the road a little bit.
Right.
So.
And as a coach, I think this is why it's also important to receive coaching from other coaches regularly. You know, you and I are pretty busy, and we for the most part, we program for ourselves, which is dangerous, by the way. It's dangerous. But, you know, we know what we're doing from a programming standpoint.
Right.
There are many pitfalls in programming for yourself, but I still think we both seek out other coaches, our colleagues, from time to time just to get input.
Yeah,
and because we know they're going to approach, and we need to know what that feels like, because that's what our clients are experiencing too. You know?
Yeah. No, and I think by allowing a client, and really we don't allow them to do anything, but by introducing to a client every now and then a different coaching perspective or a different coaching viewpoint, we allow them to get the best of both worlds. We really allow them to get a lot of experience from more than just one perspective, which is really powerful. It's powerful. And they get the best bang for their buck too. They really do. They get many different viewpoints and many different eyes on them, and so fresh eyes is important to me. I think it's a big deal. We probably should do that more often. I taught some classes for you recently, and then we had JoJo, a local coach. She's kind of interning with us a little bit. She came in and taught part of a class. And you've taught one of my classes. And so I think it's good for us to do that and rotate and get those new, fresh eyes on our clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, if you train by yourself at your home gym, even if you've been doing this for years and you pretty much know what you're doing, it's still useful to go get some coaching every once in a while, you know, if only just to interact with the rest of the strength community and have some camaraderie with people. Sometimes it's really fun if you're training by yourself. I did this in a garage for a long time. It's really fun. I remember just coming out to your gym in Saginaw when you had the CrossFit gym out there.
Sure.
Part of it was for the coaching. A lot of it was just to go and lift with other lifters.
Yeah.
Right? And I know that's a lot of people right now that are maybe training by themselves. But even if you train in a public gym too, go get some coaching from time to time. Go train in another environment. Also, that's part of the fresh eyes too. Fresh space, fresh air.
And we've talked, fresh air. We've talked about this a lot in several other episodes about coaching and the value of professional coaching and what it does for you, how it can leapfrog your program and your fitness forward by having the right kind of guidance on the front end of the program and not waiting until, number one, you can afford it. Sometimes that's the issue. Or number two, you have time to actually go to a coach. Do that on the front end.
Yeah.
Do that on the front end. Hire a professional coach. Hire a barbell coach. Hire a starting strength coach. but hire a coach on the front end so you get that good guidance and you get that program started correctly on the front end. And I've had several lifters who have come to me just recently and say, I was lifting for about a year with a friend of mine and I was doing okay, but I'm lifting in warm-up sets now or on my light day what I was doing back then, and I really thought that was heavy.
Right.
And coming and seeing a professional coach has really kind of launched my program forward because we know some things. What's that statement? I know these things.
Oh, I know.
I know these things. And so
I know stuff.
We know some of these things. And so
and we've been through it before.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
and we coached hundreds of lifters.
Yeah.
Thousands probably. So hey guys, thanks for joining the 40Fit Radio podcast. If you'd like to connect with us on email, it's info@40fit.com. Go to Instagram @40fitradio, and you can go to Facebook, 40Fit Nation. We loved having you on the podcast today. Go out there and get you some fresh eyes so you can improve your fitness program. Take care and stay safe.
All right, see you later.